We are so excited that you have decided to join us today. This is the College Investor Audio Show. Welcome. Today we ask and answer this. Should students take a gap year before college? Great question. And we'll get to it in just a second, but I want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Feel free to share this podcast with anybody that you think it might be useful for. We would greatly appreciate it. You can also follow us. We are all over social media. Just search for the College Investor. Pretty much wherever you are, we're there too. We'd love to get to know you and help you along in your journey as well. You can also find us at thecollegeinvestor.com, where you can dive into everything we talk about today and a whole lot more. All right, so let's get to it. As high school graduation approaches, you might find yourself at a crossroads. Should you take the conventional route and go straight to college? Or maybe you've been dreaming about taking a break from school to try something new. Either option holds its value for sure. While fewer than 5% of high school students in the U.S. actually do take a gap year before enrolling in college, the Gap Year Association reports, that's a neat association, right? The GYA? They report this, and I quote, students who had taken a gap year were more likely to graduate with higher grade point averages than observationally identical individuals who went straight to school. So one might choose to take a gap year for any number of reasons. It just kind of depends on your own needs and interests following high school, and no one can make that decision for you. However, in today's podcast, we focus on common pros and cons of taking a gap year and identify some ways to kind of help you take your next step, regardless of what your decision is. Okay, so what does it mean to take a gap year anyway? A gap year is typically just 1 year between high school and college, in which you kind of pursue other non-academic interests. It's meant to give you a break from the academic rigor of attending school every single day. Most students use the time to travel, learn some new stuff, learn about themselves, work, otherwise engage in an activity that brings them closer to knowing what they actually want to do next. Taking a gap year isn't a new concept in the slightest. Several high school graduates in the U.S. opted for a gap year in the COVID-19 era, causing enrollments to dip 2.5% lower than average in 2020. The idea of a gap year first gained popularity, though, in the 1960s. For decades, the United Kingdom has seen the gap year as a way for young students to gain practical experience and expand their perspectives before they actually start college. The idea is now catching on globally and adapting to different societal norms. Here are the top 10 reasons real quick students choose to take a gap year. Number 1, to gain life experience. 2, travel. 3, take a break. 4, explore options for post-secondary education. 5, volunteer. 6, explore other career options. 7, learn a new language. 8, are encouraged to do so by parents or peers. 9, to gain work experience. And 10, they were not admitted to the college of choice. And here are some advantages. Let's take a look at these. The main goal of a gap year is to just encourage students to get outside their comfort zones and expand their horizons in a way that isn't directly tied to an academic environment. Advocates of a gap year emphasize the many benefits an academic break can offer. Just like taking time to dive into your passions and build maturity through new outlets. Here are a few other advantages of taking a gap year. Creating opportunities for personal growth. This gap year can lead to significant personal growth by distancing yourself from what's familiar to you. This could mean something as simple as creating a new daily routine. It could be as dramatic as moving to a country far from home. Either way, this new independence will enhance your self-confidence and create a strong sense of responsibility. And in the event that you move away from home, you'll be forced to become a more self-reliant and adaptable person to change. These are all good qualities to build for sure, and ones that you'll learn, or lean on rather, heavily in your future career. Finding new academic motivation. Ironically, taking a break from academics might leave you feeling kind of recharged and ready to learn more. Students tend to return from a gap year with a clearer understanding of their strengths and weaknesses, and how to align those with their academic goals. And then as a result of this renewed motivation, research actually shows that students who take a gap year are more focused on their studies and perform better academically. Elevating your future career. Have you ever been told that you need experience to gain experience? So a gap year can do that. be a perfect time to kickstart your work experience, even gain a competitive advantage when you eventually enter the post-grad job market. Internships, part-time jobs, volunteer work, all that stuff allows you to develop valuable skills in interacting with others and meeting deadlines. Plus, these experiences can help clarify your career goals and expose you to various job titles in your industry of interest. Very cool. The next pro, gaining a global perspective. Immersing yourself in a new culture, geography even, can be a personally transformative experience. If you have the opportunity to do this, I highly suggest leaning into it. Being exposed to different languages, cultures, and norms builds social awareness and enhances your ability to empathize with others. Why? Well, because trying, seeing, or doing something completely new to you challenges your assumptions and biases and encourages a more open-minded approach to the world. Recognizing that people come from all kinds of socio-economic, cultural, and racial backgrounds, and then having patience for those who aren't like you, is a truly invaluable skill to obtain in life. Let's take a look at some drawbacks of this gap year thingy. So, you wouldn't have a full picture of what a gap year is if we chose not to review some of the associated disadvantages that can happen. So while the benefits of taking a gap year are compelling, it's important, too, to also be aware some things that could present a challenge. So as you kind of listen through these, remember that the goal here is not to deter you from taking a gap year. It's just to present you with all the relevant information that's going to guide you in helping to make the best decision for yourself. The first one we'll talk about is being realistic with expenses. Depending on how you spend your gap year, the costs can add up, especially if you plan to travel. Cost is one of the biggest barriers to taking a gap year. While traveling is a great way to spend this time, it's a good way to calculate what you plan to spend on travel. A really good idea to do this, accommodation, and other activities. On the flip side, though, there are ways to ensure you can cover your costs during this time. Certain organizations offer grants and scholarships actually for gap year students. And if you choose to work during your gap year, your income can supplement funding provided by one of these programs. Losing academic momentum, kind of the next thing we'll talk about. Yeah, taking a break can be good, but another common discussion is that you actually might risk losing your academic drive. A year away from the routine of formal education could be difficult to bounce back from. Plus, I'm not going to lie, going back to school full-time after collecting a paycheck for a year can be a stark reality change. So to combat this, you might consider continuing to engage in your education in some way, even if on a much less rigorous schedule. Online classes. Learning a new language maybe, otherwise maintaining your intellectual competencies will help you ease back into school. Facing societal pressures. In a lot of parts of the globe, taking a gap year is not considered the norm for recent high school grads. So because of that, you might encounter some uncomfortable social and parental norms to follow the traditional path to college. Your parents may especially fear that you could lose your motivation or direction. If you find yourself in this position, it's important to discuss your goals and plan for your gap year to demonstrate the value it'll bring to you. And then you can kind of help others to see it too. Highlighting the benefits of a gap year and reminding others why this is what you need at this time can kind of help them to get on board with the idea and be on your team. Does a gap year affect college admission? Okay, so lastly, if you're wondering how a gap year might impact your chances of college admission the following year, I'm here to tell you. It typically works in your favor, actually. It mainly depends on how your year was structured and then what you can speak to in your application packet. So as long as you meet the admissions requirements and can demonstrate your academic interests, having that gap year can likely amplify your application profile. Let's talk about choosing your next step real quick, and then we'll wrap up for today. Taking a gap year can completely transform your interests and goals, all while reigniting your passion for learning. If you're considering a gap year, start by weighing the pros and cons that we shared today, and then ask yourself a few key questions about whether a gap year is right for you. Ultimately, this decision comes down to, you guessed it, your individual circumstances and goals. If you decide to embark on a gap year, just be sure to thoroughly plan out how you're going to spend your time and then what kind of budget will allow you to get the most out of this brand new experience. And that is our show for today. We hope it was helpful. If it was and you know a friend who could use this info, feel free to share this podcast. You can also find the key questions you can ask yourself, the admissions requirements that we talked about, lots and lots of different resources for you right inside this article at thecollegeinvestor.com. Thanks again for stopping by today, and we'll talk to you again real soon.